One of the largest drug busts in history just went down, and it didn't involve heroin or cocaine or methamphetamine or fentanyl. And you will never guess who was charged. Almost 200 medical professionals were charged, including almost 100 doctors and nurses. These people were criminally charged in one of the largest medical cases ever, resulting in $2.7 billion in intended losses and $1.6 billion in actual loss. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you exactly what this means and the various kinds of fraud that could have occurred. My name is Diane Bass. I am a federal criminal defense attorney, and I represent individuals who are charged with or are under investigation for white-collar crimes. I've seen a lot of federal cases involving doctors, but I have never seen a case involving so many doctors with such a huge amount of loss. So in one of the cases that I'm very familiar with, it involved doctors who opened a business where they were selling Adderall online. So these particular doctors started a website during COVID, and they took advantage of the whole telehealth craze. So during COVID, if you recall, people weren't going into the doctor's office. Doctors didn't want us in there. We didn't want to go anywhere. So people could have a Zoom call with their doctor, and the doctor could prescribe medicine if that was necessary. So what these people are being accused of is advertising on social media for ADD medicine, which is called Adderall. So imagine the people that are on TikTok and Instagram that are shopping for Adderall are not necessarily going to be people that really need Adderall. They're going to be drug shopping. Unfortunately, today, Adderall is a hugely addictive drug. And what's happened is that the pharmacies have run out of the drug, so people that actually need it haven't been able to get it. So what happened was, these nurse practitioners were taking hundreds of calls a day, and they were so swamped, and they were prescribing Adderall to pretty much everyone that called. They weren't doing background searches, although the nurses thought the company was doing them, but they weren't. And so ultimately, the large pharmacies like CVS got involved, and they interviewed somebody who was honest with them and said, "This is an untenable situation. I can't handle this many clients a day." And yet they were prescribing medicine for almost everyone and increasing dosages. These people just had to pay a monthly fee to get their Adderall. It was crazy. So over 200 individuals were arrested. I'm only talking about this one case, which involved between 5 and 10 people, but it also involved about $100 million in fraudulent prescriptions that were submitted mostly to Medicare, which means that it was billing or Medicare fraud. In this case, the Medicare fraud was that these people were submitting prescription requests to be paid for by Medicare for medication that was medically unnecessary. So, sentencing in federal cases involving fraud are based on the amount of loss involved. In this case, we're talking about $100 million. So if you are at all familiar with the federal sentencing guidelines, we start with the sentencing guidelines chart. That chart prescribes a certain number of levels for each offense. The levels are increased based on the amount of loss. So then you look at this other chart, which tells you how many levels to increase it, and these doctors are looking at a ton of time based on the federal sentencing guidelines. So there are two potential ways that this case could go. The first of which is that these doctors could go to trial and fight the charges, and I don't think they're going to do that because the evidence is overwhelming. The other thing they can do is enter into a plea deal where they plead guilty to the charges, and then it is their attorney's job to work on mitigation. That is their only saving grace, unless they have information about other people who committed fraud, and they can cooperate and give them substantial assistance in the prosecution of someone else. But if I were representing these doctors, I would be working on mitigation like crazy. So the first thing that the government is interested in a case like this is people who were involved in the crime and that could cooperate and provide testimony if necessary at trial, and really kind of put the puzzle pieces together for them. Those people will receive a drastically reduced sentence because they came in early and they gave as much information as they could, and they would plead guilty before the charges were ever filed. Now, these doctors who were arrested are in a completely different situation because they've already lost the opportunity to cooperate. They have been arrested, they had to post a bond to get out of custody, And now their attorney's job is to go through the hundreds of thousands of pages of documents and either try to come up with some kind of defense or just try and mitigate the sentence, which is going to be potentially difficult in this case. One of the things that will probably happen is that the doctors will offer to pay restitution, and they will give the government as much money as they can come up with in the hopes that the federal judge will accept this restitution as a very big mitigating factor and reduce their sentence. But I don't know if that's going to happen in this case. So this is a really interesting perspective to realize that not all drug dealers are cartel members or drug addicts. Sometimes they are doctors. So if you or anyone you know is being investigated or has been charged with a crime, please reach out to me. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my other videos.